All righty. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the District Department of Transportation's uh, fiscal year 15 transition plan update. I hope everyone can see my screen. I'm sharing here. I want to welcome everyone to this public forum where we just want to kind of give the public a chance to review what we're preparing to submit to federal highways, explain what we're submitting, and then kind of give you some information on where you can send us feedback about the report we will submit to federal highways. All right, here's the agenda for tonight. And we're going to kick it off with just brief introductions here. My name is Xavier Davis. I am the Americans with Disabilities Act coordinator here at the District Department of Transportation. And then I'm going to just do a little housekeeping here. I want to first, I'll start with see if we have our chief on the line, our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Lakeisha Love Pettis. If she's here, I'd like to acknowledge her and see if she had any opening remarks she'd like to say, any hello she'd like to say. Is Lakeisha on the line? Okay, maybe not. After Lakeisha, I'd also like to acknowledge my direct supervisor, the Equity and Accessibility Branch Manager, Mr. Zachary Smith. If he's on the line, I'd like to just open the floor up to him just to say hello to everyone before we get started.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Zach Smith, Equity Branch Manager with the District Department of Transportation. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, Zach. And again, thank you all for joining. So we've done the introductions. After the introductions, we're going to move towards speaking about just briefly about the Americans with Disabilities Act. From there, I'll touch or highlight on my role as the ADA coordinator here at DDOT, and then following that, we're going to talk about DDOT's ADA transition plan. So the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 is the act. Those titles, along with this DC regulation, is what really governs the district and myself on how we implement the ADA. Now, here at the District Department of Transportation, while we have an ADA coordinator, we deal mostly in Titles 1 and 2 of the ADA. Titles 1 and 2 deal with employment and then public access. But as well as dealing with employment and public access, we're still stewards of the ADA. So we will deal in every title of the ADA as needed or as necessary or as the public would demand here at DDOT. Now, why are we doing this transition plan discussion? What is a transition plan? I'm sure that's a great question. So under Title II of the ADA, it specifies that that government entities such as ourselves, DDOT, has to come up with a plan, yeah, pun intended, of how we are going to make public services and public transportation accessible for persons with disabilities. I don't say, it says person with disabilities, but I like to say accessible because sometimes it just needs to be accessible for a person with a stroller, a person, person that likes to push around a cart. So we just want to make the transportation network accessible. Specifically, in the ADA, there's a specific regulation that kind of outlines what the transition plan should look like. And this is so anyone who's online or who's listening to this, if you want to go and find out, like, what should DDOT's ADA transition plan look like and what should it include, under the 28 CFR Section 35150, it outlines the specific qualifications or that are necessary for an ADA transition plan. So each year, DDOT is required to submit a transition plan update, which is what we're doing today. So from there, what we're going to do is that we compile all the assets in our network in this plan, per se, and we kind of talk about or describe how we're going to ensure or bring these plans into full accessibility. So again, the ADA transition plan ensures that the district public right-of-way is fully accessible. The transition plan we don't make a brand new plan every year. It's a working, livable document. So it's almost like our blueprint each fiscal year about what the work that we're going to do within our transportation network to make it more accessible. Each year, this plan has to be submitted and accepted by the Federal Highway Administration. Now, things that we're reporting out, and so there are a number of things that we could report out in our transition plan, but specifically what they're looking for, what Federal Highways is looking for, they're looking at like the assets that we own. Assets are things like the sidewalk. So the sidewalks belong to DDOT, curb ramps belong to DDOT, bus stops or transit stops or APS devices or APS accessible pedestrian signals, all of those belong to DDOT. So when we're composing our transition plan, what we're doing is we're talking about all of these assets that we're bringing into ADA compliance. Okay, so this screen could look a little intimidating, but it's like, okay, and I wanted to prepare you for what you're going to see in the transition plan. So we have a draft of the FY25 transition plan that's already posted. Now, what you're going to see a graph that looks like this, and you're like, okay, what do these numbers mean? So I'm going to go just straight to fiscal year 24. So fiscal year 24, it says that like these are the number of APS devices, transit stops, curb ramps, and sidewalks that we brought into compliance. And while these numbers may seem like a little bit, this is a lot of great work that DDOT has done. What's noteworthy here is that specifically for like sidewalks, DDOT spent about $22.5 million this fiscal year alone, just removing barriers within the public right of way and bringing sidewalks into compliance. And then for like APS devices, DDOT spent an estimated $500,000 just to bring APS devices into compliance. And these are bringing devices into compliance as well as maintaining the devices that we already have as well. Second chart or graph you're going to see within the report is going to be it's called an asset inventory of barriers. And what this shows is like the total number of assets that we own, and their compliance or non-compliance with the ADA. Now, what's noteworthy here, and what you're going to see within the draft is that while this number seems a little off balance or a lot off balance, right, as it relates to non-compliance, this inventory of barriers was completed in 2016. So since 2016, we haven't done an inventory of barrier, nor did we while we were completing or bringing assets in compliance, we didn't have a working inventory where we were actually updating this list in real time. And so there are devices that we added to this list of assets that wouldn't be included in this 2016 inventory. And there can be some devices that maybe we did bring into compliance that may not have been captured. So when you're looking at this asset inventory of barriers, it's important to note that for fiscal year 25 and beyond, what DDOT is looking to do is that we're looking to do a brand new full inventory of barriers, going through and make sure that we're inventorying all of our APS devices, our transit stops, our curb ramps, our sidewalks to see what is their true ADA compliance. From there, what we look to do is take that information and actually make a front-facing dashboard for the public to see, like, here are all of our assets, here's what's in compliance, here's where they're located, here's where the issue is located, so that the public can see that in real time. Now, this is going to take some work, so this won't happen overnight. We hope to get a dashboard in place before the end of fiscal year 25, but this is all budget dependent. Throughout the actual ADA transition plan, you're going to see a lot about budget, because budget plays a major factor in the work that we can do and the things that we can bring into compliance. And Zach, please stop me if there's questions, or if you see if I need to go back over something, just please stop me here. What I want to highlight here is designing ADA compliant assets. So I wanted to really highlight for the public that DDOT has really honed in on the quality versus quantity nature of how we are designing pedestrian facilities. We don't look to put sidewalks in every stretch of the district, and only half of them meet the compliance of the ADA. Versus, we are meticulously working to ensure that the slopes are correct, the widths are correct, the curb ramp widths are correct, the slopes of those ramps are right. We're working to make sure all these things are right. And so while those numbers that I showed you in previous charts may seem minor or minimum, they're actually, it's because the technical aspect of designing these pedestrian facilities are important, and that's really what DDOT is honing in on. And that's really what we have really hit home throughout our divisions within the work that we're doing here at DDOT. Now, when we're designing all these pedestrian facilities, there's a level of documentation that we're doing. So we've got to provide written documentation, that we keep pictures of things that we complete, that we complete or bring into compliance. But I also wanted to point out here is that when DDOT is documenting these things and we're bringing assets into compliance and we're fixing curb ramps and we're fixing sidewalks, it's important for the public to note, or just note, that sometimes we can't bring an asset into full ADA compliance. And what that means is that for some reason, the physical terrain or wherever this asset is located, it just prohibits us from really bringing the asset into compliance without going beyond our budget constraints or the scope of the project. So what we do in those times is that we say we're going to bring this to the maximum extent feasible. So maximum extent feasible. So if the cross slope is supposed to be 2.0, and we can get the cross slope to 2.4, and we tried, we reconstructed the curb ramp, and we tried, we maneuvered it, and we said we can only get the cross slope to 2.4. We're going to document that, hey, because of whatever the factors were in the field, that we couldn't bring this asset into full compliance. However, we brought it to the maximum extent feasible that we could meet closest to what the ADA requires. So I wanted to really stress here that sometimes you may see new construction and things, and you'll say, well, that doesn't seem like that's correct. Maybe, or maybe it is, and it's hard to judge with the naked eye. You really need some tools and some instruments out there to really judge it. But if some things you say like that really doesn't seem if it's correct, sometimes we do things just because that's to the maximum extent in which we can get this into compliance. And really, that's all I have as it relates to DDOT's FY25 ADA transition plan. So what you're going to see on the screen here is that here's a link for the 2005 ADA transition plan draft. So I encourage people to go online, review the link, review the data, review the feedback, and there's some other things we outline it within the transition plan about, like standards that we're using. Review all of these things, and then we want you to provide your feedback back to us. I want you to go to ddot.ada.dc.gov and send us an email about your feedback about things that you liked about the transition plan, something that you want to see more of in the transition plan, or any recommendations that you may have for a better transition plan. Because this, like I said, this is a working document. This is not just DDOT's document, but this is our document that we're sharing with the general public, so that we want the general public's feedback, because this is your document too. And from there, I would just open it up to any questions. And I see Zach has just put the link for the transition plan in the chat.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay. So if there are no questions, again, if Lindsay says, Zach, could you read Lindsay's question for me? I missed that.
Sure, 1 second here. Does the draft plan include steps DDOT will take to reduce repair times for sidewalks?
So the draft plan doesn't include that for steps to reduce plans. But if there's a concern about the time that DDOT has to repair sidewalks, that's something that you could send us feedback on, and that's something that we can include because we're going to include the public's feedback. So if the public's feedback is that there's concern about the time that it takes to complete the sidewalk repairs, that's something that we could include. But the draft doesn't include that. But great question. Any more questions? And so, I will note as it relates to like DDOT service times. That's a little that's a little separate from from I guess what I'm capable of delivering. I'm certainly going to take this message back. So within 311 system, and while we're here, I'll do a quick plug for DC 311. I encourage everyone, if you see something, say something as it relates to like issues within the city, using the 311 system to actually report these things and get them documented. 311 is a great system that houses all of our issues in the city, and it's awesome for the residents. So you can go to 311 online, you can call, you can go to Twitter. There's so many ways, or I think it's X now. I apologize. I go to X. There's so many ways in which you can report an issue with 311. So I did want to do that shameless plug for 311 as well, because that's how we keep the city moving and operating. Any more questions for us?
I don't see any more questions in the chat.
All right. Okay. Now, like I said, so the link for the FY25 ADA transition plan is in the chat. I encourage you all to review it. There will be updates that come to that link, and as the draft is being updated, you may see something one day, and then you're going to see that something change. It'll be notated that the change was as of this date.
Do you have one question? What is the deadline for comments?
Deadline for comments are 1 week from today. But then, and the deadlines, and those are just to get the comments in that we will for implementation within the FY25 transition plan. If ever there's feedback or issues or concerns that you want to relay specifically to myself as the ADA coordinator or to our division, the Equity and Inclusion Division, you can always use this email address that you see on your screen, or the ddot.ada.dc.gov. You can always use that email address to send feedback even beyond the deadline for commenting on the ADA transition plan as well. And Zach, before I wrap, I just want to ensure that there are no further questions in the chat.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
All right, seeing none, I want to thank everyone for coming out and spending your time. It looks like it was a shorter evening than expected, but thank you all for spending your time and listening about what we're doing here at DDOT with our ADA transition plan. I hope that everyone gets a chance to review the document, send us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. If there's questions, please feel free to send those questions to that email address as well. And then other than that, thank you all for joining. You all have a safe evening and take care.